So let's go on a journey on how to sew this beautiful bustier that comes with an inbuilt snatched waistline. And if this is really something you feel you're interested in, make sure to watch this video to the end and also click on my channel if you want to know how I drafted this. So this is the pattern which I have drafted out, and I've gone ahead to place it on my fabric, and I made use of the crepe fabric. And this is it. And on this side I added half-inch round, but on this side I added 1 inch. I just wanted to increase the length by half-inch, and here I have 2 inches, and this is for my seam allowance. But on this side I have half-inch, that is for the sewing allowance, because you have to leave that one in. And here's the back, and this is what the back piece is, and I've gone ahead to cut both the lining and the front piece. And I also went ahead to add 2-inch seam allowance for the back, and also half-inch round, that is the sewing allowance. And this is the front piece I'll be making use of, and I'll be making use of this chantilly lace to line it. I just use that crepe fabric to make you have this skin illusion. So this is the fabric I'll use to line both the front and the back. And this is the neck piece, which has the queen and neckline with the collar, and I went ahead to add half-inch on both sides and 2.5 inch for the seam allowance and half-inch round. And this is the lace fabric which I'll be using for it. This is the lace I'll be using, which I also went ahead to add half-inch just the way I cut the lining, and this is what it will look like if I'm done joining. And for the front, I went ahead to add stay to it, and went ahead to cut my wadding, and this is what it looks like. So I just went 1 inch below the bust here, that's below the bust point, and this is the back. So I'll go ahead and go to my machine and sew this down, sew this round it this way. When you're trying to sew it, make sure you place it well, and you go ahead and take it to your... I went ahead to use a pin first so that it doesn't shift, because this lace tends to shift when you're trying to sew. So you go ahead and gently sew this down, and make sure your lace is not shifting, because if it shifts, the lace becomes longer than the lining. So you go ahead and gently sew this down. So after sewing it all around, this is what it looks like. The side, I've gone ahead to sew it all around, and this is what the side looks like now, and this is what the front pattern looks like. So I also go ahead and take it to my machine and join, but I didn't notch this bust point half length. And so I make sure I notch this, as this will help me to place my fabric properly, so you know that these points are meeting each other. So I notch for both sides, and I make sure these notched parts are meeting each other. As you can see, the half length which I notch is meeting each other, and so you can see this will help you to... I advise you usually notch this part, as this will give you a guide and make you know you've placed your pattern well. So as you can see, I'll go ahead and stitch half-inch round. So we'll go to the sewing machine and stitch this. So you don't forget to gently place this. If you have notched, make sure those two notch parts are meeting each other, both of the half length of the bust point. Make sure they are meeting each other. As you can see, this is the bust point, which is 13 here. It is meeting each other. You can see I've placed both pieces well. So I also went ahead to use my chalk for a guideline to mark it. So I'll go ahead and use my machine and sew it. While I'm sewing half-inch, gently sew this, and while you're following the shape which you've drawn out, make sure you're just sewing half-inch, as that's the half-inch you left for the sewing allowance. And I usually advise, while you're trying to sew, make sure you're making sure you're aligning the two pieces together, and make sure they are aligned. So you gently do this and make sure they meet each other. So I'm done with sewing it, and you use your hand to arrange it, and this is what it looks like. So while you carefully use your hand to arrange that, As you can see, this is the final result after joining the bustier together. And for me, you can see what the stitch looks like. I sewed half inch, and when I use my tape to confirm, you can see I have 8 inches and my neighbor's nipple is 8 inches. So you can see this is the final result. It is looking so beautiful, and I'm really loving the look. So this is what it looks like after you're done sewing your bustier. For me, after doing this, I usually go ahead to remove this excess wadding that is left on the half inch, which I use for the joining allowance, because I really want this part to sit so well and look so flat by the time I'm ironing it. So I just go ahead and trim this excess wadding. As you can see, I'll just go ahead and trim it on both sides. I'll do it for this side and I'll do it for the other side. I'll just carefully try to use my hand to open it up. Just be careful when you're trying to do this. So you use your scissors and just trim that particular excesses out. So after I'm done trimming, this is what it looks like. I just go ahead and go in with my scissors and notch that particular underbust so it could open well and sit well. As you can see, this is what it looks like. I'll go ahead and use my iron to flat open this. And after using my iron, this is what it looks like. You can see it is looking and sitting so flat. And I'll be going ahead with this boning, which you can sew on. And I'll be adding my boning this way, right from the underbust, which is 13 inches, which I have. And I'll be sewing the boning down to the half length. I'll put the boning on this side and on this side. And I'll also be putting the boning here in the middle, and I'll be attaching the boning also on the sides. And after ironing the part which I've sewn, you can see it is sitting flat. As you can see, you really cannot see the seam. So I'll be going ahead to use my machine to sew this, and I'll be placing it right in the middle, and I'll be sewing very, very close to the end of the boning. And I usually advise while you're trying to sew this, make sure you're using your hand to arrange the boning and also flat open that place which you've sewn down. So I'll be going ahead and cutting the boning by at least 1/2 inch shorter, because on that half inch is where I'll be sewing, which I'll be using to turn. I'll go ahead and use my lighter to burn that part so it doesn't have to make me feel discomfort when you wear it. So you go ahead and gently sew this that is at the extreme edge of the boning. As you can see, I left half inch because that is where I'll use as a seam. So I don't need to put the boning down. So I'm done attaching the boning, and I'll be doing this, turning it over to the other. You can see what it looks like. You can see the line is looking so neat and straight. And I'll go ahead and do this too on this other side. I'll go ahead and sew down the boning on this side. Like I said, make sure you gently do this and double stitch when you get to the end so it doesn't have to lose. And I'll attach it on both sides, and you can see what it's looking like. And so I'll be going ahead to add the boning to the side, and I'll be measuring 2 inches away from this point and also 2 inches away from this point. And this is I'll be drawing a straight line, as this will give me a guide on where to attach my boning. You could use the regular boning if you want, that is the other one which you can't sew on top, or you could use this, and this is usually based on preference. For me, I'll be using this, and for the back, I'll be using the boning which you can sew on top. And I went off camera to attach the boning to the side, and this is what it looks like. Then I decided to change my mind not to add the second boning at the other side. Now, working with the back piece, as you can see, this is the back piece, and I've gone ahead to sew down the chantilly lace on the crepe fabric. And this is what I'll be using to line. I'll be using the same material. But guys, I noticed when I used the same material, it made it so thick. So it wasn't easy to sew on since I was using industrial machine. So I would just advise you probably use a softer fabric or a lighter fabric. So this is what the back looks like. And this is the side, that is the one which I'll be using as the queen and neck line with collar. So I just go ahead and use my chalk to mark out the back so it is much easier to trace. And this is it. and I'll gently go ahead and place the lace fabric on the lining and make sure they are sitting well. Each end points are meeting each other. As you can see, you do this, I'll go ahead and sew this side down. I'll turn it in. So yeah, I just went ahead to cut the tip of the lace and I'll be attaching it just this way. This is how I want the Queen Anne neck collar to look like. So this is what I wanted to look. I didn't really have excess fabric, so I had to use this particular method where I had to trim the side. And I'll be doing this for the side also. So I've gone ahead to use my machine to turn this out. And you can see this is what it's looking like when I am done turning this out. And this is what the final look will look like by the time I'm done joining. And so for this front piece, I'll go ahead and use the lining to turn this, both this side and the side. So this is what it looks like after I've gone ahead to turn the upper side. So I went ahead to also top stitch on the lining because this will help it to sit so flat. So I'll go ahead and sew this down by ½ inch. I'll sew the both sides by ½ inch. I'll go ahead and do the same for the other side. So now this is what you can see. This is what the Queen Anne neckline look like. I only turned that other side. So after I'm done attaching the lining to the lace, this is how you gently place the Queen Anne. Make sure you place it well and it is resting well on the others on the lower parts. So you can see you try to adjust and carefully place this well. Make sure it is both ends are meeting each other. As you can see, I'll just go ahead and stitch on it. So this is what it looks like. So after I'm done with this side, I'll just go ahead and open it up and arrange it well. I'll also go ahead to use my iron to use your iron to lay this flat. As you can see, this is what it's looking like. You can see the shape. It's already giving that particular body shape. So I'll go ahead and stitch that down also. I've stitched it down. So now before I add this, I'll go ahead and stitch the end part. You can see I've stitched it. You go ahead and turn it because that part will be facing outward. It will be outward. So go ahead and, like I said, gently place this now very well. As you can see, you try to make sure those end points are meeting each other, they align, and you stitch on it. So I've gone ahead to do this. So this is what it looks like. And for the back, I'll go ahead and stitch the side by ½ inch. So I'll go off camera and stitch this. I've gone off camera to stitch this. And this is what it looks like. For the neckline, I didn't stitch the neckline in since I was going to be adding a collar here. So I just went ahead and stitched just this parts. And you can see what it's looking like. So you can see I did not stick the neckline. So I'll just go ahead and come out by 2 inch because that was the seam allowance. So I'll just go ahead and place this and I'll sew this down on the back while I use my lining to cover that part. And I'll sew this side and also sew the side. So leaving that side out. So you go ahead. So I've gone ahead to use my machine to sew this. And this is what it looks like. And make sure to use your scissors to cut out that end point. And why you do this is because by the time you want to turn it out, you'll be able, that point to be able to turn out well. So it doesn't end up being bulky and that part doesn't turn out well. So make sure you trim those end points at all sides by the time you want to turn it. And this is what it looks like after I've gone ahead to turn it. And these are the two side piece, back piece together. And you can see the gap is just the 4 inch which I've left out in draft. So I just go ahead and measure that out and make sure I have 18. And yes, I have 18 by the time I'm done bringing them together, which is my bust. My bust is 36 divided by 2 makes that 18. So I'll go ahead and add my boning space to this. I'll stitch my boning to this and I'll also put the space for this boning here. So I'll go ahead to my machine and this is the boning I'll be working with. But so make sure you use your lighter to bond the end so it doesn't have to make you feel discomfort. It doesn't have to pierce or injure you when you wear that. So So I just go ahead and mark that point and know where to stitch. So you just gently go with your machine and stitch this down. Make sure it's a straight line. Make sure whenever you're trying to stitch, make sure it's straight line. So you don't have to make it bend, so that and make sure you're giving enough space for your boning to go in. Make sure it's not too tight or it's not too close, so as your boning can go in or fit in smoothly. So after I've done this, now I've created the edge where the boning can go. I will gently fix this boning into the space which I have created for the boning. And this boning I'm using is a boning you cannot stitch on. So you go ahead and use your hand to adjust, or you use your iron to flatten it so it can be straight. So I've gotten to the tip, so I'll go ahead and mark out this point which I've marked. So I'll know that is the end. So I'll just go out, pull out the boning, and from that place I've marked, I'll take off half inches, because that is the half inches I'll be using for the for the sewing allowance. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. So the boning is shorter than the lace by half inch, and you know this is because you can see this is what I've done. I've added the boning allowance to it. As you can see, I'll just go. I have 12 inches. Yeah, so I have 12 inches for this place, meaning the boning I'll be cutting out will be 11.5 inches. So make sure you're cutting out 11.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and trim out the 11.5 inches. And don't forget to always use your lighter to burn the tip, so that it will be smooth and it doesn't have to trick you while you are wearing the outfit, or it doesn't have to rip your lace. So this is, you're burning that sharp end point. If you don't do this, it might rip your lace or probably make you feel discomfort. It can pierce you while you wear the outfit. So I went ahead to use my hand to straighten this. So after I'm done, I went ahead to put the boning into the boning line of sewn out. So I'll do, so after I'm done, I just went ahead to use my hand to adjust. You can make use of your iron to make this flat, and the iron will work so well. So now this is what it looks like after I've added my boning to it. And now for the front piece, I'll just go ahead and make sure I match both the front piece and back piece together. Make sure the shoulder are meeting each other. You can see I just went ahead to use the pin to hold it down, as this would not allow the lace to shift while I'm trying to sew down. So you just go ahead and use the pin to carefully hold this down while you are making sure they are well aligned and adjusted. So this is what it looks like. So I've gone ahead to stitch the shoulders and the sides. You can see the sides, I stitched it. I went ahead to take my body measurement, and for the shoulder I've gone ahead to stitch, and you can see I'm left with this part. So this is the part I'll be stitching around to the back. So this is what it looks like when I'm done. So this is the final look. So now for this back, I'll be adding the fabric which I'll be using to close out the loop. Yeah, you can decide to use your fabric to close it. You can decide not to use your fabric. But for me, I wanted this closed with the same fabric. So you'll be placing it this way. At this point, this is where you'll be placing it, and you'll be sewing it down. So make sure it's the same length and size. So I'll be sewing it down at this side. You go ahead and sew it down. So by the time you flip it over, this is what it looks like. So let's go to a machine, and I'll be going to the machine and showing you. I'll be using this bias to turn it down. So yeah, so this is what it looks like. So I'll go ahead and remove the stitch which I have on this side, because that's what I just used to hold that down. So, and I've also gone ahead to attach the neck, that is the back neck, the collar neckline to the back. As you can see, this is what it is looking like. You can see the collar is already coming out. And I went ahead to use bias to stitch this, but it was too thick. It was just so thick. So now I went ahead to check my measurement if I measured it correctly, and I have the perfect measurement here, which I've done. Now for the back, you can see what it is looking like. So I went ahead to stitch on this both line. So I just make sure the stitch is just on the line which I used in creating that of the boning. Now for the back, for the down piece, that is the skirt part, I'm making use of this fabric and this lace. So I'll be making use of this. And this lace is the lace is 1 inch longer than the lining, just 1 inch longer. You can decide to make it the same length, so by the time you fold it, it is a little bit longer. You can decide to make it 2 inch shorter. This is based on preference. So I've gone ahead to sew down the skirt part. I've attached both sides together, and went ahead to check my measurement. My hip is 15 and a half, and I have my 15 and a half. So go ahead and fold this into two pieces like this. Make sure the two side seam are meeting each other. Make sure they're meeting each other, and you go ahead to fold this way. Make sure you properly arrange this. So I went ahead to use my pin. I usually like working with pin to hold this down, as this will help you to give you a less difficult work and a fine finishing. So I went ahead to use this pin to hold it down so that it doesn't shift, since I'm working with the lace and this line is kind of slippery. So this is what it looks like after I'm done. So just make sure I went ahead to also use pin to hold it down at this side. So by the time I'm cutting, the lace doesn't have to shift or pull out from the lining. So now I want a V shaped. Based on what you want, you can make it V, you can make it slanted, you can make it look like a U. So now I just went ahead and combed down. I want it to be as long as 19 inch. I want it 19 and a half, but I measured 19 inch because by the time I'm done sewing, I'll have taken half inch and it comes down back to 19 and a half inches. So you don't go ahead and you don't need to measure on your hips, on the waistline, because by the time you've joined, by the time you've sewn it, you've already taken out half inch away. So I went ahead to use my ruler to connect that straight line. So this is what I want my basquine waistline to look like. So I went ahead to see let's see what 19 and a half inches will look like. So I just went ahead to come down by half inch to see what 19 and a half will look like. So I also went ahead to use this line to use as a guide by the time I want to sew. So I measured out 19 and a half, but I wasn't okay with 19 and a half inches. It's too long. So I went ahead with just the 19 inches we have marked. You can make yours 20, 18. This is based on your preference. So I went ahead to also use pin to stitch that down. So I'll gently go in with my scissors and trim out and cut out that parts which I've marked out as my basquine waistline. So you gently do this. So make sure you don't cut that part which you've joined, that is the side which you've sewn. You just stop at the side. So open it, this is what it looks like. So I went ahead to also use my chalk to mark out the half inch which I used to join, as this will make it very easy. Now going ahead to the top, I'll just gently place my tape rule so I could know where to mark. So I know the underbust, which is 13 and a half. So this is 13 and a half, 13 inches, sorry, where it is sitting on the underbust. So I'll come down to my waistline, which I'll be using 15 inches. And I know I marked out 19 inches. And on this side, so I'll just go ahead and take the 15 inches on this side as my waistline. So I'll go ahead and take out 15 inches. So I'll go ahead and also use my ruler to connect that basquine effect, which I've also created on the lace. I'll be creating it on this upper side. This will make it easier. So don't just make sure your chalk is a little bit faint, and don't bother because you'll be sewing on this line. This will make it easier by the time you're trying to attach your lower parts to this upper parts. So as you can see, I made sure they are the same width. I make sure they are the same width. So just gently make sure the midpoint of your lace is meeting the midpoint of this upper body. So as you can see what I'm doing, I made sure the midpoint is meeting it. So you just go ahead and place it this way. Gently place it and arrange it. And I advise you use your pin to hold it down, to pin this down. So you do this and you check for this side. Make sure it is well aligned, and the joining of the upper part is also meeting this joining of the lower part. Make sure everything is well aligned. So you check for the side to make sure wherever you are joining on this lower part is the same place you are joining on this upper part. As you can make sure this line is also you can see, make sure that line is also meeting that part which you've joined on the upper part. So I've gone ahead to sew this down. As you can see, this is what it looks like by the time I'm done sewing. I said I used that line which I marked out on the lace as a guide. And for the side, I went ahead to also stitch the side. You can see I went ahead to stitch this, but between that place, I just raised my machine because my needle cannot pass that boning. So this is what it looked like. And for the zip, so you go ahead and trim out the excess zip that is left. But on the side, you can see you won't be sewing that place. You just go ahead and fold the end. While you trim the excess zip that is left out, you do it for both sides of the zip. You trim out this excess side. So you go ahead and fold it this way and fold it this way while you top stitch on that side. So I'll go ahead and do the top stitching on that side of camera, and I'll be showing you what the final look or result of this outfit looks like. And I'll go ahead and also add sleeves offline, and this is the final look of the outfit, and this is what it looks like. I worked an overwear and I was really getting lots of compliments, and I hope you really found this video really helpful. And I know by now you could sew your own bustier and inbuilt snatched waistline with a basquine effect yourself. And thank you for watching this video to the end. You're the realest. Stay tuned. Love you all.